Welcome to the David Pakman Show. There's a very interesting study, actually a couple of studies. One is a recent study out of the University of California, and actually UC Riverside to be specific, and it's discovered that there's a link between suicide, gun ownership, and political conservatism or Republican Party identification, the way you want to look at it. And when I started reading this article and other articles about these studies, I really wanted to go in and try not to assume anything, but really look at what the data says. And that's what I'm going to try to do with you here. The study was published in the Social Psychiatry and in an issue of Social Psychiatry and Psychiatric Epidemiology. And the study found that states with high levels of firearms availability and a proclivity towards political conservatism, as measured by the percentage of states that vote Republican in presidential elections, tended toward higher rates of suicide. Now, a mitigating factor of this, interestingly enough, was that church attendance, which is also sometimes correlated with political conservatism, was shown to decrease suicide rates. So let's look at it further. The state with the highest suicide rate, for example, is Alaska. This is second to Montana. It's second only to Montana in firearm ownership. And Montana had the third highest suicide rate in the nation. Other states with high rates of conservatism, suicide, and gun ownership include Wyoming, Idaho, Alabama, and West Virginia. The percentage of gun suicides were higher in the South and West than in the Northeast or Midwest. And that's one study in the U.S. Now, there was a similar study done in the United Kingdom, and this was reported on by The Guardian. We could say, well, there would be some things that are different about the UK as a country, but we could still see if the same trend holds true. And in fact, it does. Suicide rates have tended to rise in the UK when a conservative government has been in power during the last 100 years, with the exception of Edward Heath's administration from 1970 to 74. And so we seem to see a correlation there. I think this is a fascinating study. I really don't think that conservatism in and of itself makes someone more likely to commit suicide. I think if we take what I would do in interpreting these results, when we look at correlation versus causation, if we take a broad look, people who choose to own guns may already have other things going on psychologically that would make them more likely to at some point commit suicide. If they have a gun, maybe they would use the gun in the commission of that suicide. And that gun ownership tends to correlate, broadly speaking, with conservatism. It's kind of a chicken-egg thing. But again, and I don't want people to understand that I'm saying anyone who wants to own a gun has psychological problems and will commit suicide. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if we look at large numbers of people, if we look at why people get guns and why people commit suicide, there is a cross-section there which may relate more to what is causing the suicide and the desire to have a gun that is not specific to simply being conservative. That's my analysis of it in looking at the data. I see correlation and not necessarily causation. That's the way I would kind of frame it. Again, without having many more A/B types of tests done to parse out the influence of specific variables, we can't really say conservatism leads to suicide. Send me your thoughts, though. If you disagree, I absolutely want to hear from you.